The new rules in 2023 will change everything. F1 couldn't come sooner. We're desperately waiting for the pre-season testing to start, and while many think that not much is going to change from the next season onwards, that is not the case. The new technical regulations that are going to be applied starting in 2023 are going to shift the momentum from Red Bull to Ferrari and Mercedes, and that's why the Austrian team is very angry with how the FIA has reacted with the porpoising issue. So what exactly is going to be different from 2023 onwards, and how can Ferrari and Mercedes benefit from it? 2023 is considered a season full of changes, and it seems like teams are going to have to adapt to a new set of regulations. On top of that, there are some new drivers in some new teams, like Piastri with McLaren, Alonso with Aston Martin, and Gasly with Alpine. Not only do the last two have to learn how their new car works, but they'll also have to do it with brand new regulations, a challenge that could present itself much harder than originally anticipated. And don't forget that we're going to have some brand new faces as team principals, as Andreas Seidel was replaced with Andrea Stella, and Frederic Vasseur came to replace Mattia Binotto in Ferrari. Yes, it's going to be a very interesting season, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. The regulations that are going to be implemented from 2023 on are going to rock the grid and make it even more compacted, which is why everyone is eager to see the season start. After the 2022 regulations presented themselves as a huge challenge to overcome for many teams, practically for every team that wasn't named Red Bull, the FIA had to react somehow for the next season. The aerodynamic phenomenon of porpoising has started to present a real issue for the driver's health, at least according to Mercedes, and that's why the Silver Arrows have lobbied the governing body to make some much-needed changes. And indeed, changes were underway. After changing some stuff in the middle of the season, the FIA has brought a variety of new rules for the 2023 season, including the increase of the floor height to 15 millimeters, an increased diffuser throat, and more sensors to better monitor the porpoising. While many believe that the FIA is bringing in these regulations for nothing because the teams have found a solution to the porpoising problem in the second half of the issue, the FIA sees nothing wrong with it. With the increased ride height and diffuser throat, the ground floor effect is being lowered a bit, and the aerodynamic phenomenon of porpoising isn't going to be as present as it was in 2022. On top of that, this is very bad news for Red Bull, given the fact that they've dominated the 2022 regulations, and now that the car heights are going to be increased, it eventually means that the field is going to be more leveled. One of the reasons why is because the number one solution to fix this issue in the first place was to raise the ride height, but that eventually meant that the team in question would lose performance by gaining drag and losing downforce. Now that this has been made mandatory, it's safe to say that this situation is going to cause lots of issues for Red Bull, but their advantage wasn't in the aerodynamic prospect alone. They had a very fast engine, one that had a straight line speed over 30 kilometers per hour, and now that they've been able to secure 2 championships in the 2022 season, it's going to be much tougher to keep things their own way. According to Pat Simmons, who is the F1 Chief Technical Officer, the FIA has reacted a bit too fast on these regulations. As he went on to add, "I think the FIA overreacted a bit after Baku. In Baku, we saw the worst effects because a team tried something that didn't work and then went public quite loudly. If the FIA hadn't intervened, the problems would have been solved. Most teams now understand how to control the bouncing. The teams first had to solve this problem before they could work on their aerodynamics. Bouncing is not purely an aerodynamical problem. There's also a lot of mechanics involved, or example, suspension, stiffness. One couldn't help but wonder whether Wolff is, as Andretti said, a bit too powerful for F1, especially after Mercedes has been the loudest team in the paddock when it comes to these changes being implemented in the first place. As Horner said, if Ferrari or Red Bull were in the place of Mercedes, he doesn't believe that the FIA would have done anything regarding this issue. But apart from the aerodynamical changes with the technical regulations, there are some other ones that are going to change the way the 2023 season is going to unfold. For example, the teams will have more freedom when it comes to the gearbox designs, as they will have more freedom to alter the homologated gearbox designs for 2023. In the case of materials, processes or proprietary parts becoming unavailable or having their use restricted for health and safety reasons, On top of that, there are some other changes that we've yet to see, such as the mirrors being made larger. Mirrors were an extremely important part of the aerodynamics of the car in 2022, and now that the sport isn't moving towards rear-facing cameras as a replacement for traditional mirrors, we'll see the mirrors changed for the next season. Obviously, this is a huge move towards the safety of the drivers, and with that being said, we are yet to see how everything will unfold for the F1 grid. But this is far from everything that we're going to see changed for the next season. Remember that the tyres are undergoing some significant changes, primarily due to the tyre heating blankets and new tyre compound being used in the sport. From 2023 onwards, the grid will experience a new band of tyre, the CO, which is based on the current C1 band of tyre, with a new set of C1 that is yet to be introduced. Simone Barra from Pirelli spoke about the new tyre compound that is going to see daylight from 2023 on, as he said, "The new C1 was tested in Texas and it offers more grip, as the old version of that tyre wasn't as grippy. The current C2 to C5 tyres remain exactly the same in terms of composition." While everyone thought that the FIA would go further with their plan to lower the temperatures in the tyre blankets from 70 to 50 degrees Celsius, it seems like the governing body is planning a drastic move that is yet to come in 2024, which is banning the usage of the tyre blankets in full. Obviously, this is something that drivers will be outraged about, and have already been outraged about, because the most important thing to them is having grip when exiting the garage, which was mostly produced by the tyre heating blankets. The FIA is moving in a new direction, whether we like it or not, and the F1 drivers have to adapt to everything that's being thrown at them. However, they aren't that grumpy for all of the technical regulations that are bound to happen. Just look at the roll hoop change that is going to be implemented from 2023 on. Following Zhou's terrifying crash in Silverstone, it became evident that the car shouldn't turn upside down and slide on the track like that. True, the roll hoop and the halo system have been very helpful when it comes to dodging the hazards of the sport, but an improvement can always be made. That is why the FIA is now requiring the teams to change the roll hoop to a more rounded top, which will reduce the chance of it digging into the ground during an accident, which is exactly what happened with Zhou's Alfa Romeo. One of the biggest challenges that the teams are going to face is the lowering of the minimum weight of the car from 798 to 796 kilograms. Now that the cars will have an increased ride height, the floors are going to be a bit thicker, which eventually means more weight. That is no good news for any F1 team, as we've seen that the weight of the car is something with which the teams have struggled a lot, especially the top-performing ones. That is why one way to reduce the weight of the car, although in a slight manner, is to change the paint of the car and apply a different mixture, something that Ferrari was able to do in 2022. With that being said, we are very eager to see how the season will unfold, but for those who believe that these changes won't do absolutely anything, you're in for a huge surprise. Teams are going to have a very hard time finding the right balance with the new regulations, especially Red Bull, a team that will have a reduced amount of time to spend in the wind tunnel facilities and the CFD factories. What do you think about the new regulations? Let us know in the comments below.